So, one thing that's interesting, Empire is usually considered to be one of the best Star Wars films of all time. But like all movies, that was not really the case when it first came out, right? People were divided and mixed on it. I looked at a lot of older reviews and pulled one that I thought was really interesting, one of the more negative reviews by a critic named Richard Combs with the Monthly Film Bulletin. I guess it's a magazine out of the UK, which doesn't really exist anymore. But he is quoted as saying, "The story counts for less than gimmicks. It might be judged from the lack of resonance in the one narrative revelation concerning Vader and Luke Skywalker." Wow. So story counts for less than gimmicks. Might be judged for the lack of resonance in the one narrative revelation. So yeah, basically he didn't love the big reveal about Vader. Spoiler, by the way. If you haven't seen this already, come on, you're 4 years too late. But yeah, a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people thought it was silly or just didn't measure up to the first one. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that because it emphasizes how subjective films are. So what resonates with me isn't necessarily going to resonate with you, right? And I think we forget that sometimes, like in this age of internet and internet outrage. Like we think, oh, if you don't like this movie, then you're not a good fan or what have you. And as I move along through this process and watch more of the Star Wars films and get into more of the controversial Star Wars films, I'm definitely going to have opinions that differ from you all. And that's fine. That's okay. Star Wars is supposed to be fun. Like, that's why I'm a fan of it, is because it brings me joy and I find it fun. Now that said, I'm not going to discontinue critiquing all of these movies just because I love all the Star Wars films. Definitely going to provide some critical analysis. Yeah, it's a great poster for sure. I think that's one thing that the new trilogy kind of lacks, is like a solid romance, which is why I was all about the Reylo stuff, because I think Star Wars really needs some kind of romance. But we'll get to all of that later. So I'm going to give you guys a countdown. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, play, and then we will all hopefully simultaneously hit play. All right, it's 6:06. I think we're ready to rock. Finger on the trigger. 1, 2, 3, play. And here we have a few seconds of the little twirly bopper buffering. And here is the 20th Century Fox fanfare. The Lucasfilm Limited. I have my cat sitting right next to me for this, keeping me company, by the way. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. So I'm going to be commenting a lot throughout this. So if you want to just watch the movie and you're sick of hearing me gab, by all means, click off. I will not be offended. But I think when we watched episode 4 the other night, I had mentioned that, you know, it wasn't originally episode 4, A New Hope. And I thought maybe the because when it re-released, then they put the episode 4 title and whatnot. I thought that re-release was pretty quick, like 78. It wasn't actually until 81 that A New Hope was released as A New Hope. So it was after Empire came out that the first Star Wars was re-released as episode 4. So George got in trouble for the beginning of this movie. Back then, in the late 70s, early 80s, you were required by the unions to have credits for your directors and your writers before the film started. Well, George didn't want to do that because it kind of ruined what he was going for, his whole aesthetic. So for the first movie, no one really cared because they didn't think it was going to be a success at all. And then it was a massive success, so he tries to redo the same thing here. and the Writers Union and the Directors Guild were all, or the Writers Guild were all going to try to prevent the movie from being released. And of course that didn't happen. So then they fined George and the director, who was a guy by the name Irvin Kershner, and George ended up paying almost $250,000 in fines, and then he left the unions. Of course, he hated the Hollywood system anyway. But yeah, never turned back. So here we are on the ice planet of Hoth with this beautiful practical prop, this physical prop, this probe droid. Now we're coming in on the Tauntaun, the little furry lizard guy that Luke is riding. So one thing that George had mentioned about pursuing, there's Caleb, yay! There's Mark, some more people trickling in. Good to have you. The Tauntaun. Yeah, feel free to chime in whenever, guys. So, yeah, George wanted to do the first bit of this movie on this ice planet because he knew it was going to be a challenge, right? He thought it was like necessary because you can't cheat when your background is all white. He thought out in space, of course, when you're dealing with a black background, you can hide a lot of imperfections and whatnot. Well, it's a lot harder to do that when you're dealing with the white background. So here's the Wampa, knocks off Luke, starts choking the Tauntaun. Man, they did a lot of shooting with a guy in a suit wearing the Wampa outfit, and dude could not hardly move. I mean, you can find footage of this guy online taking a few steps through the deep snow and just face planting. It's pretty fantastic. Here's the best character in all of cinema, Han Solo. Kershner. Wow. Corey says that Kershner was cited at a screening of Clone Wars. The best part of going to that screening. Yeah, if that was the 2008 Clone Wars movie, I would highly agree with you. Yeah, let's talk about Kersh just a little bit more. So George didn't want to direct the second one because he was so overwhelmed and stressed with the first one, right? So Kershner was teaching at USC, and of course that's where George Lucas went to school, and that's where he met Kershner. And the rest is history. We already learned that Han is going to be leaving, but he ain't going to leave before he has words with the princess. And I gotta say, coming up is going to be probably my favorite scene in all of Star Wars, right here. So I might actually shut up and let y'all watch this for a bit because it's really good. There's just a lot of movement in this scene too. They're walking through the hallway, the extras are passing between them. There's humor and sarcasm that only Han can say. And that scene was originally shot to be a little bit longer. There's an extended version of it. It's more of the same. It was probably a good cut. All this stuff is fantastic between Han and his frustrations with Chewie and his frustrations with 3PO. Yeah, Caleb, I have watched Clone Wars Season 7 except for the one that was released today. Clone Wars certainly got better as it went along. It was a rough start, and people seem to forget that. And I still have problems with some of those episodes personally, but I'm glad that it's been well received. Um, yeah, it was a rough go there for a while. And I still don't know why Jar Jar is emphasized so much. Like the romance with Jar Jar stuff. I'm like, why? Who asked for this? Very weird choice. I always thought that was interesting that Han says, I'll see you in hell. It's really the only reference to like heaven or hell in the Star Wars universe. I think maybe there is one more in the sequel trilogy. Yeah, the Jar Jar episodes make no sense. I'll do a whole video on Clone Wars for you guys some days, but I just don't understand some of the stuff Filoni decided to go with. And I know everybody is like all about Filoni right now, but I'm hit or miss. So with this Wampa, speaking of scenes that got cut, there's a whole subplot where the Wampa or other Wampas infiltrate the base and like rebels are chasing him down and trying to kill the Wampa, and they eventually lock him in a closet and put a sign on the door, and you can actually see in this cut there's still a yellow sign on one of the doors as people are walking through the hallway. But all of that got cut for time. So here is the first time that we really see Luke using the Force for like telekinesis, right? This blew my mind as a kid because I didn't really grasp what the Force was. Put the Han curse. Yeah. Right? Theology? Star Wars? No, there's no spiritual elements in here. Yeah, very interesting, for sure. Alright, so the Wampa loses the arm. A lot of this was added later during the special edition stuff in the 90s. The Wampa stuff in the original film was like the guy on the suit, which looked real bad, that I think they cut most all of that out, and they kind of just did shots of his arm or shots of his back or a growl in the back. Yeah, special edition Wampa. I kind of like that we can actually see the Wampa, a full scale of him in this version. There's very few additions made to The Empire Strikes Back. Not the same with Jedi and A New Hope. Yeah, Caleb, totally about the accident. I think though that a lot of that is an urban myth about them writing the scene with him getting scratched up because of the accident. Because the car accident was in 77, was like right around when the first film got released, so he had over a year to recover. And the reconstructive surgery apparently went pretty well. I mean, he looks different, for sure. But the writers and George always said that no, this was the plan for his character right off the bat anyway. Who knows? This is the first shot that was ever done for this film. Luke walking around in all this snow. Because similar to the issues that they had on the Tatooine set in the first movie with the weather, they had the opposite problem here with this weather. The old Phil Tippett stuff. Hey, Phil Tippett's an artist, man. Gotta give him credit where credit is due. But I don't know. Love these Tauntaun shots. What was I talking about? Okay, so yeah, they got 18 feet of snow in Norway where this is shot. Like the biggest snowstorm that they'd ever had in like 50 years or something like that. and they couldn't shoot. So everybody's like stuck in their hotels. Kershner, the director, says, you know what? Let's just put the camera in the hallway, open up the door, and capture Luke Skywalker running through 18 feet of snow. And poor Mark Hamill went out and did his thing. What a trooper. This is a sad moment. I think the original trilogy does a superb job of making all of Chewbacca's moments so important. Like every time he does something, it's very purposeful. And I wish they maybe took advantage of that a little bit more in the sequel trilogy. He doesn't require a lot of time, of screen time, to do a lot. And a lot of that is because Peter Mayhew's so good in the role, I think. I think he was a better actor than the new kid. But maybe the new kid will come along. All right, so Luke sees the vision of Obi-Wan through the snow. When I was doing the commentary for A New Hope, I was mentioning that when Luke is fighting his X-Wing through the trenches of the Death Star, he hears Obi-Wan's voice. And now we're seeing Obi-Wan communicate with him even further. He's a translucent, faraway, distant, kind of distorted ghost. And of course, once we get to Dagobah, we see him even more clearly. So I kind of have always enjoyed how, as time goes on, the Jedis are able to communicate more effectively, right, with the four spirits. Yeah. Yeah, Chewie's handled so well throughout this movie, throughout this trilogy, Corey. The moment in Return of the Jedi when he gets reunited with Han in the cell block of Jabba's palace, and he's like taking care of him, it's so subtle and so perfect. Yeah. I need to revisit that commentary on the DVD for sure. Kershner's great. He's got that voice, that very distinct voice. There's the Tauntaun guts. This will always gross me out as a kid, with Luke being shoved in there. Oh my goodness, my cat is going crazy. So as I am watching these with y'all and talking more about character development and such, Corey, you're a writer, so you know way more about this stuff than I do. But from an actor's standpoint, scenes like this, where Han goes out and is literally risking his life for Luke, helps so much. And something to bear in mind too is this takes place 3 years after the first movie, so we know that these three have been together for a while, but we still need these bonding scenes like this to really see our big three characters grow closer to one another. Alright, while they're looking for Luke and Han, and while I'm sort of talking about writing as if I know anything about writing a screenplay, the whole soundtrack is so brilliant. John Williams, it's sad for me to think that Williams will never be writing the score for a Star Wars movie again. How depressing is that? Yeah, absolutely, Caleb. So, George didn't want to write this script either, as you guys probably know. This 2-1B droid, by the way, I'm going to mention this just real quick before I continue talking about writers. His mouthpiece is a piece of an old school microphone stand. That's a trivia tidbit that I did not even know until I looked it up recently. I was like, oh, it totally looks like a mic stand. Snowspeeder favorite toy. Now, this scene had a lot of extra stuff shot before Han and Chewie enter. Luke and Leia have like another almost near kiss moment before Han comes in. Luke tells Leia that he's going to be leaving. All that stuff got cut, probably for the best. This scene gets weirder every year, Corey says. Just good stuff, good writing. So, yeah, Derek. Who's Derek, Corey? There's the kiss. I almost missed it. And then Luke. It's so awkward when you know the relationship. Take it easy, would you? So George didn't want to write it. He hired a writer by the name of Lee Brackett. She was a writer of a lot of space fantasy fiction, like novels, and had some experience writing screenplays as well. She submitted her first draft to George Lucas and then died of cancer, tragically. So George had to find somebody else. And he didn't love her first draft anyway, from what I understand. She used a lot of his story outlines to put together the first draft. Oh, cool. I'm not seeing everybody joining. But if you're joining, I am glad that you're here. Nice to have you, Derek. Yeah, so George then wrote a couple more drafts on his own before he hired Lawrence Kasdan. And Kasdan is the one who did a lot of this. He came back to write Jedi. He wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is how George first got introduced to Kasdan, because Steven Spielberg was like, hey, George, you should check out this kid. And then Lawrence Kasdan came back for Force Awakens and Solo. I like his writing for the most part, even though I didn't really love Solo very much. I think having him write Solo with his son actually was a disservice to the plot. But we'll get to that when we decide to watch Solo. No, Corey, I didn't think that you thought that would be a great name for a droid. Yo, Derek, can I get some more Bacta tanks in here? All right, here's the Imperial March, and I believe this is the longest start time before we see Vader in the original trilogy. We're about 21 minutes in. You enjoyed Solo? Good for you, man. I enjoyed some things about Solo. But yeah. The wife just popped in, found the cat. Leah, can you come help real quick?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
All these beautiful matte paintings. I love the deck of this Star Destroyer. Do you know how I can see how many people are joined? Because people are joining that I didn't even know. That's the system. I like too that we get to see some more of these Imperials highlighted a little bit more. Strangulations in one film. Piet.
It's not showing when they just pop in on here. Normally it'll show like on here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's being
not doing
weird.
that anymore. Okay. It's this new broadcast system. I'm not sure on this.
Here's another favorite moment when Chewie Pratt almost like burns Han Solo's face. Okay, so no way to figure it out, huh?
I'm not easily right now.
Alright.
think it's different now because it's a live
Until next time. Here's another great Chewie moment. I feel like we missed a lot of these great little Chewie moments in the sequel trilogy. They tried. I think JJ realized it was an issue, but then when he tried, it was like too little too late. But I appreciate the effort. I really think JJ needs more credit than he gets, but I gotta stop talking about stuff that we're not watching right now. Another good scene here between Han and Luke. See, these characters have these relationships. Relationships that we didn't quite get in the new ones. That Imperial March theme, though, am I right? So here's Vader in his little hidey hole. Ooh, and that first strangulation is coming up, Corey. I'm also wearing R2-D2 socks, you guys. So, I feel pretty legit. Across the resistance. Oh no, I get you, Corey. I always thought it interesting that Vader is strangling him and they're not even in the same room, right? He's doing it like over Skype or Facebook Live. And this actor who plays Admiral Piet in the foreground does such a great job of like illustrating, he knows what's happening behind him and he's a little afraid about it, but he's also excited to get a raise. I wonder what the pay is like when you are in the Imperial Navy. So John Ratzenberger, in case y'all didn't know, the guy from Cheers who plays Cliff, is in the khaki jacket right behind Leia. She's actually perfectly blocking him in the scene. But here he goes. Yeah, good old Cliff. And he also does the voice of I think he voices a character in every Pixar film. You probably know the answer to that, Corey. Of course, this was before Cheers, before he blew up. The set design is just cool. I love Echo Base, the way those lights are in the war room area. It's a lot of fun. Ratzenberger is in every Pixar film. That's pretty crazy. I'm sure that there's a spreadsheet or Wikipedia page that has, thanks for the like, Kurt, has all of that information listed somewhere. He's got a very distinct voice, though, which is weird because in this film, it doesn't really sound like him. So I don't know if he got dubbed or if it just because he's younger and he hasn't developed, the John Ratzenberger voice that we know now. Clavin would know. Cliff Clavin would know. The story about how he got that role on Cheers is pretty fun. He's like, every bar has a know-it-all. I'm your know-it-all. And they were like, yeah, we should have you do that. The walkers are such a cool design, though, too, right? Like that's an essential ingredient for all Star Wars films. I think is not only cool aliens, but you gotta have cool ships and machines. Poor Dak. Dak's not going to make it throughout the movie. Dak! Beautiful AT-AT walkers. Another thing that I read while I was doing some more research on this is that George Lucas prefers that it's pronounced AT-AT, which I thought was interesting. Because usually he's not a stickler about how you pronounce stuff in the Star Wars universe. But supposedly he wanted it to be an AT-AT walker and not an AT-AT walker. I used to refer to them more as AT-ATs, but then I fell into the AT-AT jargon as well. And he's lost his gunner. Mark Hamill's wife gave birth to their son Nathan during this production, and I think the day that they shot the scene where the walker steps on the speeder was the day that he was born. And my wife has met Nathan Hamill, actually. I was super jealous because I was not present at the time. Ugh. Justice for Dak. Bring back Dak. Here's Wedge. You may remember him from A New Hope. Dak was kind of a dead weight. Literally, he was dead weight. And when he died, he was absolutely dead weight. Good old Wedge. Wedge makes a very brief cameo in Rise of Skywalker, like bleak and you miss him sort of thing. But he has a line. Look at that beautiful model. Look at that beautiful model getting blown up. Yeah, I like seeing old Wedge too. I wish he would have had a few more lines, but us original trilogy nerds only get so much. And meanwhile, Han and Chewie still haven't left. That's what I love about Empire, is that everything goes wrong for these guys. I heard the saying once that good writing is you write that your characters climb up a tree and then you burn the tree. That's kind of what's going on. To see all the struggles that they're dealing with. And you shouldn't laugh, but it's Han, so of course it's funny. Okay, so while the space battle, or it's not a space battle, it's an ice battle. There's the chicken walker. So while this is going on, hey, here's some more people liking my stuff. So glad. Which did you like more, Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker? I liked Rise of Skywalker more than The Last Jedi, to answer your questions. This one goes here, that one goes there. So brilliant. And the acting. I mean, there's a reason why Harrison Ford's one of the greats. No, I'm definitely going to do a lot of chatting about sequel trilogy when we get there. But I liked Rise of Skywalker quite a bit. Not afraid to say it. Didn't really like Last Jedi, but it's probably for different reasons than what you might think. Because a lot of people kind of regurgitate the same complaints about The Last Jedi. And I feel like mine are a little bit different. Some of them are the same, but a little bit different. Han comedy. He's good, man. He's good because he doesn't think he's funny. Harrison never approaches it like, oh, Han thinks this is a funny thing. No, he's very intentional with all of it. There's that scene where the walker steps on the snowspeeder. Thank you, Kurt. Yay, we're in agreement on Rise of Skywalker. Good to hear that. And here's Leia and 3PO stuck in this mess. Look at that set. Look at that protocol droid that's leaning on its side. you, you and your siblings played Hoth in the Snow. That's hilarious. I just have one sibling, my sister, and she's a big Star Wars fan too, but I don't really remember playing a lot of Star Wars games with her. I had a lot of action figures. Corey, you know all about that. I will always remember the day you brought your action figure stash to one of our meetings, and me and some other guy were like playing with them, and you were like trying to put them back because you were trying to get home to your kids. Kurt, that's hilarious. No, this conversation is cracking me up. So I want to chat a little bit more about Kershner real quick, because he says again and again in interviews and documentaries that he did not see this movie as a science fiction film. He kept saying it's a fairy tale, because in science fiction you have to be very concerned about the jargon, the atmospheric pressure of stuff, there not being sound in space, things like that. But with a fairy tale, you can do whatever you want, which I think is why I'm not bothered by a lot of the critiques of the sequel trilogy and its flawed logic, I guess. I remember like the bombs that get dropped in The Last Jedi at the very beginning of the film was like a big hang up for people, because they're like, there's no gravity in space, how could these bombs drop down? I'm like, okay, I get it, but this is there's the yellow sign on the door in the hallway, so there's a Wampa in there. And in another version of this movie, 3PO goes over, takes the yellow sign off of the door, and then later when the snowtroopers come in with Darth Vader, they knock on the door, walk in, and they get attacked by the Wampa. All these deleted scenes are on YouTube. I'm sure you guys have seen them because you're nerds like me. But if you haven't, it's a pretty funny deleted scene. Jabba's skiff is like a big toy. Jealous, Corey. Which one did you never know? Oh, the Wampa stuff. Yeah, dude, go check out online Empire deleted scenes. It would have been a really fun subplot, but I'm guessing maybe they're trying to build a suspense a little bit more. I don't know. Hurry up, Goldenrod! That's another reason I love this movie, is because Han is stuck with 3PO the whole time. Like, if they could have incorporated more of that sort of stuff in the sequel trilogy. Yeah. More 3PO and Han moments. Basically anything to irritate Han to make me laugh is what I want. And just the stakes are so high throughout this film. Like, they're always on the run, and it's not like a slow motion run that we have in Last Jedi. Ooh, it's like there's serious immediacy to this chase. Oh, Jabba's a smaller one that Luke was on? Corey, are you talking about the skiff now? I'm confused. I like the snow troopers. I love the various new troopers that we have in each movie. So there Luke sees his friends flying off. And meanwhile, he and little astromech droid are going to go elsewhere. Notice here, Luke is communicating with R2 over this screen, right? He can't speak the language of R2. That was something that changed with the sequel trilogy, and I think in Clone Wars TV show might have had something to do with that as well. But yeah, droid speech was not so much a thing. It's just, yeah. I love that all of these characters are kind of stuck together, you know? It's almost a bottle episode. It's like the second act of this film is a bottle episode for the Millennium Falcon. Take evasive action. Look at these beautiful ships, these beautiful models. Someday I'm going to sit down and tally up how many things go wrong for Han Solo in this movie. "3PO was trying to tell you the whole time, Han. We're in trouble." The shot of Han down in the depths of the Falcon. Oh, it's so brilliant. Man, and you nerds all know what's coming next when Chewie places that little box right next to the edge. So good, so good. Okay, so they're about to enter the asteroid field, right? Apparently the visual effects artist threw in a whole bunch of random stuff to be asteroids, and a lot of it got cut out later. But I think there's a potato that still has made it. I've never found the potato, but apparently one of these is a potato. There used to be a shoe. That's one that they removed because I guess it was probably too obvious that it was a shoe. Hey Julia, my old roommate. Thanks babe. Dude, I'm doing all these movies because there ain't a whole lot else to do right now, and I think the world needs a little escapism. So, this is always how I found it as a kid, growing up grumpy and dealing with parents. But seriously, like I had rough times as a kid, and this film franchise really brought me a lot of happiness. So, I mentioned earlier that George Lucas didn't want to be quite as heavily involved, and that's why he got another director and writer. But of course, with the budget getting out of hand and then being delayed, he had to move in and oversee some of the filming and actually do some directing. And apparently, even the first rough cut screened for audiences did not go well. And here I'm going to read some of the stuff about this actually that I found about Lucas. So he re-edited the movie himself with even worse results. Extensive reshoots and further post-production effects put an enormous strain on his health, his marriage, and his relationships with Kershner, the director, and Kurtz, the producer. Though the movie proved to be an enormous and critical commercial success, Lucas would never work with Gary Kurtz again, and his marriage dissolved a couple of years later. Woo! Brutal. So, art definitely takes its toll on people. I know a lot of you are all too familiar with that. Never tell me the odds. I mean, the stress that this guy had, it consumed his life. It consumed George's life. All right, so here we go to Dagobah. Dagobah, however you want to say it. Luke's going to go find this Jedi Master. Poor Mark Hamill. This was not an easy shoot for him, this film. Not only was he trudging through deep snow in Norway, but once they moved to this set, he says that if you watch him in some of the documentaries, he's like, I was the only human being on the call sheet for weeks, because it's literally him and Yoda. So I guess you could count Frank Oz as the puppeteer, but yeah, a lot of it was Mark Hamill. Snakes, lizards, all kinds of random stuff. So he said it was kind of depressing. And of course, this water, they built this set to hold all this water. It's like a big tank. And after weeks and weeks of it sitting there, it started to stink. There's always a bigger fish. There's a Phantom Menace reference for you guys. I guess I never realized how many like water monsters there are in these films. You have it here. You have one in A New Hope with the trash compactor. That monster is a Dianaga. I don't think there's a name. No, they did eventually come up with a name for this monster, but I can't remember what it is. Ew. I'm not sure what's ew. I'm gonna like it anyway, Jules. So R2 gets eaten up by the monster. He can spit out. See, oh man, I wish there was more R2 in the sequel trilogy. He makes for just like another great sidekick or pet. Kind of like Chewbacca is very much the co-pilot pet character. R2 is like a good little pet companion. Also, someone told me the other day, is Chewie Han's pet or is Han's Chewie's pet? I think that might have been Leah's question. She was like, Ruth says, like, all right, bye, Kurt. Thanks for joining, man. I'll pass the word along. The water's starting to stink. Yeah, that'd be real gross. I don't know how they could have made that less gross. Speaking of gross, R2 looks really gross right now, too. But I love the idea of, like, Chewbacca thinks of himself as, like, the master, and Han's just this little pet. He's got to take care of that guy, you know. Yeah, Chewie owes Han a life debt. That was pretty well established, especially in the expanded universe novels. But when Solo came out, Caleb, you should know this, because when Solo, A Star Wars Story, came out, they changed that. I think maybe the life debt thing wasn't as PC. Oh, here's the back of Anakin's head. So this scene was important because audiences weren't sure about Vader, whether he was a robot, a droid, a machine. Is he part man? So this confirmed that he was part human. And obviously terribly scarred. Puppet Yoda for life. I tend to agree with you there, Corey. The puppets are far superior in most scenarios. I just love all these Han Falcon moments. I'm glad you're here to tell us these things. See, we need more of that. We need more of Han calling the 3PO the professor. Because it just, he doesn't understand. 3PO doesn't get it. Oh, here we go. Here's some physical connection between Han and Leia. Any opportunity we can get those characters to accidentally bump into one another. Hey guys, they're kind of in their own quarantine right now, right? So that's kind of helpful to get through what we're dealing with, right? Awesome. Corey, thanks so much for joining, man. I know you got kids and you got to roll. Enjoy Muppet Movie. Right as we're talking about Yoda and Jim Henson, I should talk about Jim Henson soon. Yeah, I was a fan of the EU. Not all of it, but I read a lot of it and really liked a lot of it. So Yoda coming up soon. Jim Henson was going to be more involved with the creation and puppeteering of the character, but he was working on The Great Muppet Caper at the time, which would have been the second full-length feature film for Jim Henson Studios, which is why Frank Oz did it. And of course Frank Oz is Brilliant. Here he comes. Wondering, why are you here? What a beautiful puppet. Okay, so the guy who created this puppet, a gentleman by the name of Stuart Freeborn, I think that's his name. I wrote it down. Yeah, Stuart Freeborn. So he created Yoda, and he based his look off of himself. And I read this first, and then I Googled the guy to see what he looked like. It's like uncanny. Google Stuart Freeborn, and you'll be like, whoa, you do look like you could be Yoda. Yoda in the prequels, responsible for war crimes. You know, there is kind of a difference between this Yoda and prequel Yoda, and I'm not just talking about the puppet versus CGI aspect, but there was always a sense of comedy to Yoda here, especially in these first scenes where he's just literally trolling on Luke Skywalker. And I know that once he reveals to Luke that he's actually a Jedi Master, he gets a little less goofy, but he's still got a little bit of an edge to him. And I wish that playfulness would have been part of the prequel trilogy. I mean, for crying out loud, it's 20 years before, so you'd think he would be even more young and sprite and goofy. This is a great moment here when he starts hitting R2 in the face. This is also interesting because I'm pretty sure in the Clone Wars TV show, Yoda and R2 are hanging out a lot too. I mean, yeah, they do a little bit in the prequel movies, but in the TV show, they're like, yeah, it's end of season 6. Caleb, you probably really remember this. Yoda goes off on that quest, and he brings R2 with him. And then in this movie, he's just banging him in the face. See, I've always liked the idea that R2's memory was never wiped, so he remembers everything. So maybe Yoda and R2 are in on it together here, and I don't know. How could that work? Because it's not like he could use the Force to tell R2. R2's a droid. I think R2 is so smart, though. R2 is one of my favorite characters. I think he's smarter than we all give him credit for. I love this moment where Han doesn't want 3PO to know that he's taking his advice. And here we go. This might be my second favorite scene in the film. Basically, every Han and Leia scene is my favorite. But he sneaks in. I might actually shut up here a little bit too because I just love the dialogue in this moment here so much. When the big kiss comes. I'm just a sucker for the romance. I'm a helpless romantic, I guess. But these quiet moments do a lot for these characters. Scoundrel. Scoundrel. You need more scoundrels in your life. Oh, all this cool stuff to look at. It's like a little piece of machinery moving in the foreground. It's all framed so nice. Yeah, they love each other. They love each other. And then, of course, 3PO comes in and ruins it. Brilliant. She definitely had to stand on like an apple box for most of those scenes with Harrison Ford, though, because she's 5'1" and Harrison is 6'1", so he's a full foot taller than Carrie Fisher was. So yeah, the height difference definitely would not have worked if she hadn't been standing on a box. Is this when he chokes somebody again? No, this is when the bounty hunters are coming up. No, Emperor, man. It's tough to keep track of a lot of the Darth Vader stuff and the sequence of it all. So this scene has been touched up quite a bit. Originally, when the film came out in 1980, it was a different actor. It was a woman underneath a mask. Now they have the guy who's been playing it forever, Ian McDiarmid. And they changed some of the dialogue, too. See, the offspring of Anakin Skywalker, the young man who destroyed the Death Star, none of that dialogue was in the original cut. So that's something, if you're interested, I would highly recommend checking out the original Emperor scene in this movie. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi. I get that they're not trying to ruin the reveal later in the movie that, you know, Vader is Luke's father. But wouldn't Palpatine just be like, you need to take care of your son? I don't know, maybe not. Maybe he also is playing in the idea that Anakin is dead and only Vader is alive. R2 creeping up, trying to get a peek at what's going on in the hut. More snakes slithering around the set. I love this set, though. I think Frank Oz and Mark Hamill bonded quite a bit during this movie. Apparently, when Mark was getting kind of bummed and depressed about it, Frank Oz would bring in the Miss Piggy Muppet and do stuff to make Mark laugh. Because Frank Oz voices Miss Piggy and Grover. Oh, there's a whole bunch more I don't remember. Yeah, Caleb, you're so right. They like imposed the eyes of a chimpanzee on the original Emperor. That's what they used to make him look weird and distorted. They mixed that with the actress. Luke's starting to figure it out. Starting to figure out that Yoda is right in front of him. He is too old. Apparently, Mark had to redo that bit for like 16 different takes. Something like that, 15 or 16 different takes. Because the director wasn't happy with it. So he got a big old lump on his head from having to bonk, bonk, bonk it so many times. The boy has no vision. Yeah, there's just really something to be said about a practical character as opposed to a CGI. Like your eyes accept it more, in my opinion. Like when it's a CG character, I know that there's a fakeness to it. But when I watch this puppet, it's tangible. You can feel it. You know that it's there with mark. Now, I'm not saying that CGI should not be used entirely. I think it can be used really well. I just think when George got his hands on it, come prequel time, it was his downfall because he went all in on the CGI, and he lost some of the truthfulness to the story. You will be creepy. I always thought that was terrifying. Yoda's not messing around, though. Here come the Mynock. I miss Carrie Fisher. Gross. I used to know about that sound effect that the Mynock make, but it was some animal noise like reversed. I don't know if it was a horse. I think it was a horse. I think it was a horse sound effect that was like reversed. 3PO is such a chicken. So much creativity in these movies too. Like, who would have thought of this? That they're inside of a stomach? Like, it's pretty good. It's fun. I have a bad feeling about this. There's that line that shows up in every film. I don't know if it made it into Solo. I feel like I read somewhere that they decided to not include the line in Solo. But it does seem like something Donald Glover might have said. Mynock. 3PO's not even out there and he's losing his mind. Han's figuring it out. His hair looks funny with that strap all over it. Now, a lot of this stuff, with them struggling to maintain their balance, was shot very much like the old Star Trek episodes where they would be like, okay, everybody lean to the left. Now lean to the right. Now bonk your head. Yeah, all this stuff is just easy practical effects. Would you call that a practical effect? I think you call it good acting. I am not a committee. The banter is just so good. We got just a sliver of that at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker when Poe comes back with the Falcon all torched. I really enjoyed the banter dialogue between him and Rey. I guess they do have it a little bit more back on Kijimi when they figure out that Poe's an old smuggler too. But more of that. More witty banter. Space Slug. And here we see Luke continuing, well, really starting his Jedi training. I mean, I guess Obi-Wan did on the Falcon in the last movie, but more of it. Swing on those vines. George was so impressed and happy with Frank Oz's work on this film that apparently he campaigned for Frank Oz to get a Best Supporting Actor nomination for the Academy Awards. Didn't work, obviously, because the Academy is what it is and didn't want to nominate a puppet. But yeah, like, he spent his own money to try to get Frank Oz a nomination. You will know when you are calm. Peace. I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched the bad lip reading videos. They do some songs that are Star Wars themed with images and video from the Star Wars movies that are hilarious. And there's one about Yoda being a backpack while Luke runs. It's not funny when you hear me talk about it, but if you've seen it, you'd think it's very funny. Jules, you've seen them, huh? They're so funny. Oh, the one with Yoda is the Seagulls song, right? Seagull's gonna come, hit me on the coconut, and he did. And he did. Whoa! Gosh, it's so good. Now, those are some high quality YouTubers. Okay, so he's going into the cave. The Cave of Wonders. Yoda's concerned. I always thought it interesting that Yoda says, your weapons, you won't need them, but Luke takes them anyway. So he's not really being a very good pupil. Also, with all these lizards and snakes, like, you wouldn't see that in a Star Wars movie today. They would either CGI critters like that or make it, you know, some weird puppet alien. But these are legitimate snakes. Like, that is a huge, gross looking snake there. Yay, Nathan liked my video. Yeah, those bad lip readings are hilarious. So this is supposed to be a cave, but that looks like a door frame behind Luke right now. That looks like, and here looks more like a slab. So I never really quite got that. In slow motion, this is the first time we ever see slow motion in a Star Wars movie. We see it at least once, I think twice in the sequel trilogy. I was so confused by this scene as a kid. Like, how is Vader there? Luke just killed him. And then this part, I vividly remember asking my dad what it meant, because I didn't get it. And my dad was like, well, it means there's a little bit of evil in all of us. Of course now, well, I think that actually is a valid possibility, but I think it's pretty clear that it foreshadows there's a connection between Luke and Vader. And Yoda. You know, Yoda senses that this is a burden. This is going to be a burden for Luke to find out the truth. All right, here we get the bounty hunters. See, I have Darth Bane sitting on my bookshelf right now, Caleb, and I haven't ever read it. But I need to. Oh, I got to talk about Bossk. He was one of my first action figures ever. Bossk and Han were like my two first action figures. Zuckuss and Forlom. See, growing up, like there's IG-88. We see the IG droid in the Mandalorian series, different one, and there's Boba Fett, the fan favorite Boba Fett, who doesn't really do much but looks super cool. Sometimes that's all you need. But yeah, Bossk shows up a lot in Clone Wars series. What is the time in the movie that I'm at? Oh, so we are, for those of you who are just checking in or want to join, I'm at 106.53. This is on Disney Plus. The time stamp is 106.59, coming up on 107. So we're in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, and we still don't have light speed. It's not my fault. Now it's running away from the Star Destroyer. Sir, we've lost the rear deflector shield. One more. Hopefully that helps. I'll give you another one here in a couple minutes, maybe. I should probably periodically try to give people an idea of where I'm at, time-wise. Another super creative, hey, Eric, thanks for the like or the love or whatever you sent me. That's my Uncle Eric. Another super creative thing that I never would have thought about is having our hero hide himself behind the ship, literally on the ship's surface. That's instant. I got you, girl. I understood what you meant. Captain Nita, you gonna die, bro. I mean, I always thought it was a pretty upstanding choice that Captain Nita decided to accept responsibility for his actions. You'd think that Vader would give him some mercy on that. Nope. Nope. Yay, Tim! I love my family. They are so cool. Lifting rocks. Oh. Okay, this is probably my third favorite scene in the movie. It really, look at the muscles on Mark Hamill, though, am I right? He's in pretty good shape here. I was in good shape once. I think out of all the training exercises that Luke has in this film, a lot of it is like a physical thing, like lifting rocks, running around and swinging on vines. But this lesson here is the most impactful one. And this really has a whole lot to do with Luke's evolution as a character. In the previous commentary, I mentioned, Luke is a whiny, naive kid in the first film. In this one, he's still he's a little more mature, but he has that complaining element to him. He's kind of cynical. He doesn't believe fully in his abilities or in the ability of the Force and the ability of a higher power. And it's just a brilliantly shot scene, well-written scene, and Frank Oz with his voice, not only his puppetry work, but his voice work is brilliant. So I'm going to shut up for a bit, though, because this is the best part of the scene here at the end. Look at that set, though, those leaves and that fog in the background. This is all set. Judge me not by my size. My ally is the Force. My ally is this higher power that I believe in. It binds us, surrounds us. Luminous beings are we. This is great dialogue. Not this crude matter. Oh, couldn't agree more, Caleb. You want the impossible, Luke says, and walks away from his master. Look how beautiful that shot is. Oh, I can't get over this set design right now. And again, this is what you miss when you create an entirely CGI set. Your brain knows that that fog is real and that those are real props and leaves and stuff. And now Yoda gets to show off. And of course, the John Williams score again adds so much. Last I checked, John Williams has the record for most Oscar wins of all time, which is pretty crazy, but also makes sense because he's a brilliant composer and he does a lot of work. Here's some good lines coming up here. I don't believe it. That is why you fail. It just says so much about like our own insecurities as, human beings. We let fear get in the way and we don't believe we can do things. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right, so real quick, Captain Needa just got choked. Watch this actor here when he gets picked up, because his leg, he totally starts to help himself up off the ground. You had one job, man. Play dead. One job. Couldn't do it. Don't fail me again, Admiral Piet, or you'll get choked next. Here we go. This is what I was talking about earlier. Han Solo decides to hide on the back of the Star Destroyer because he's brilliant. And he also, considering he has a past working in the Imperial Navy, it kind of helps him figure out how to get out of this mess. You know what happens next? We get to go to Lando. Big Lando fan. Oh, they don't switch 3PO off that much, so I always kind of like it when he does get turned off. Sorry guys, I need a little bit of water there. I've been talking a lot and not hydrating. They're talking about Lando now. Lando system? No, Lando's not a system. He's a man. Cody! Hey, good to see you, man. I'm glad you showed up. That means a lot. I'm your Lando. I don't have a whole lot in common with Lando, I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure he had better luck with the ladies than I did. We kind of both have curly hair, though. Boy, was it good to see Billy D back again. He was having the time of his life back in Star Wars, by the way. Cody, I will always remember seeing Force Awakens with you the very first time. Front row, maybe second row, downtown LA. And then we also went and saw Phantom Menace when it got re-released in 3D. Y'all remember back when George Lucas was gonna re-release all of them in 3D and then it didn't go well? People were like, yeah, we don't need that. We're over 3D and we don't like the prequels that much anyway. Yes, sir. So here, of course, Boba Fett has outsmarted Han Solo and knew that he was going to be hiding in the trash. And so now he is going to follow him to Cloud City. And Luke is going to have a premonition. But not before R2 gets lifted off the ground. Hopefully the little actor wasn't in there at this point. Because, there's a little person in there. Little Kenny Baker. I was going to mention with the previous commentary I did, I briefly talked about how Kenny Baker and Anthony Daniels did not get along at all, the two guys in the droid costumes. And a big part of that was like, hi, Joe! Love you guys. I miss LA sometimes. A lot of times I miss LA. But part of the reason those two actors didn't get along together is I think Kenny Baker and R2 really wanted to kind of tour with Anthony as like a show, you know, and make money off of it, because he was involved with a lot of vaudeville shows back in the day, and Anthony had no interest in that. He was a more sophisticated British actor. So that was one of many, many things, from what I understand, that got in the way of their relationship. So yeah, Luke has a vision of the city in the clouds where his friends are suffering. Yoda seems to be talking him out of going. If you go, help them you can. And I never quite understood that line. Like, Cody. He says you will destroy, you can help them, if you go, help them you can, but you will destroy all that they have fought for. I gotta think about that one some more. Any thoughts on that line there, audience? This is a lot of pretty set stuff. These orange clouds and more beautiful matte paintings that artists actually had to like draw and paint by hand because they couldn't do it digitally. Apparently, when they were shooting this, Carrie Fisher was staying with Eric Idle. So if there are any Monty Python fans out there, you'll know Eric Idle was one of the Pythons. And they were shooting this in London, obviously. So Carrie Fisher would go home and party all night with the Pythons, and I guess Harrison Ford would go over there too. Apparently Eric Idle created this adult beverage that was named after Tatooine. I don't remember the exact name of it. But the night before they shot this scene, they were up all night, and they came to set still a little buzzed, which is why they're in like really good moods. And you don't see it so much here at the beginning because Leia has to still be very concerned. But the second that Lando and Han get buddy-buddy, it's like laughs and giggles and grins, and we can thank Eric Idle for that. So yeah, in this shot, that's all matte painting around the platform. The only thing that's real there is the platform itself, and here is Lando Calrissian. Looking so good in that blue with that mustache. How you doing, you old pirate? Yes, very friendly. Just really good work here by this cast. Billy D just brings this energy to the set too. That's a lot of fun. You playing around with this loser? And this gives Han another opportunity to, you know, be jealous. Because we don't have Luke around anymore to make him jealous, so we got to throw somebody else in the mix. We can thank Eric Idle for a lot of things. Fact. I need to revisit some of the Monty Python stuff. So apparently Lando, in like really early versions of the script, was going to be a clone. This was something I just recently figured out. Because of course the Clone Wars were first referenced in the first movie, and George, I guess, kind of wanted to build upon that, and he was going to have Lando be a clone. Of course, that didn't happen. But for fans of the Clone Wars series, They deal with the clones a lot, and like what it's like for a clone to go into war. Like, do they care about this war? They're just a clone. It's some interesting stuff. I do like a fair amount of Clone Wars. It's not at the same it's not the same playing field, if you know what I mean, as like the theatrical movies, but it's fun. It adds to the mythology. So 3PO just got blown up. Chewie. Oh, I was supposed to give you all another update on time for those of you who might be joining late or quite a little bit off. This is 1:22:57. We just got back to Dagobah. Luke is coming down the ladder, and Yoda is still trying to stop him from going. 1:23:09. You must not go. And here comes Obi-Wan Kenobi. We can see him a little bit more clearly now than we did on Hoth. So Alec Guinness shot one day. One day for Empire. He didn't love the attention that he got from Star Wars. I mean, he's a gentleman, so he didn't put up a stink about it in the same way that Harrison Ford kind of does. But it just wasn't his thing. So I think he was kind of reluctant to come back as a Force spirit. And he also had recently had eye surgery, and he was concerned about shooting because he didn't know if he was going to have the vision to do so at the time. But it worked out. He showed up for one day. I don't think it even took a full day. It was like 6 hours. And in his contract, he said that he wanted a percentage of the film's box office earnings. So he ended up making millions for like 6 hours of work. This is a big deal for Luke, to hear that he's not going to get any assistance from his Jedi Masters. Because Obi-Wan helped Luke a lot in the first movie, blowing up the Death Star. So they're just going to give their last few pointers. Hope for the best. Don't give in to hate. It's interesting that he says that because he knows he's going to figure out, right? Don't hate your dad when you find out it's your dad. And don't hate me when you found out I lied. All right. Interesting lines there. That boy was our last hope. No, there is another. At the time, it wasn't quite decided that Leia was going to be the other. George Lucas and Lawrence Kasdan kind of left that open. There were a few ideas being tossed around about that. I don't remember them all offhand, but of course we know now that it refers to his twin sister. Love this scene! I know I keep saying that about every Han and Leia scene, but it's true. Well, I don't trust him either, but he's still my friend. We all have friends like that, don't we? None of you guys, though, of course. So this is like the first moment where she's actually kind of being gentle with him. And that scene was longer too, but got cut down for the final film. Again, if you're interested, highly recommend. You can see the cameraman and C-3PO's head. Oh, I almost missed it. Yeah, that's a fun fact there. If you rewind it, don't do it now because you got to stay in sync with me. But as 3PO's head is passing on that conveyor belt, you can totally see the reflection of the camera crew. Unless they've edited it out, but I'm pretty sure I spotted it. It's tough when you're on a small screen. Oh, 3PO. Here he is. One of my favorite parts about Solo, the movie, Caleb, if you're still there, Lando's cape closet. I mean, Donald Glover across the board is pretty enjoyable in that film, but the cape closet's one of my faves. I love this. Lando's like, is there a problem? No, no problem. The droid is clearly in pieces. These Ugnaughts, these little creatures here, for those of you who are Mandalorian fans, you'll probably know that that little guy who helps out Mando in the first few episodes. Actually, he comes back later too, doesn't he? He is an Ugnaught. Corran, or something like that is his name. Wasn't predetermined that Leia was his twin. No, Jules, it was not predetermined that she was his twin. In the very first draft of this movie, the first screenwriter wrote about his sister, Luke's sister, but it wasn't Leia. It was some other girl named Nelith, I think. This is deep, deep nerdy stuff here. But yeah, she was not going to be the twin sister, which is why they kept making them kiss all the time, I think. Lando, you just stabbed Han in the back. Also, this moment that I just missed it when Han shoots Vader and he just catches it with his hand. Thought that was pretty awesome as a kid. I want to know what kind of meal they're eating here. Like, did Vader decide to cook up something for Leia and Han? And of course, he doesn't know that Leia is his daughter at this point, but how funny is that? Like, this is the only meal you've ever made for me, Dad! Mind blown. Yeah, Glover is really enjoyable in Solo, I gotta say. He's just a talent. But what I appreciate about his performance is that he took some of what Billy Dee did and then added his own stuff, and it was like the perfect balance. And that's what you really have to do when you create new Star Wars films, I think, is you have to respect the original source material and add something new. You can't eliminate one or the other. You have to do a little bit of both. Another beautiful Chewbacca scene. Gosh, they keep coming up. I haven't revisited these old movies a lot since the sequel trilogy, and doing so is making me realize how Chewie can best be used. Little quiet moments like this is the way to do it. Oh, this scene terrified me as a kid because I don't think I really understood. I don't think I knew what torture was until I saw this. And like hearing Han yell in this hallway scene was just like so scary. I haven't talked about Lobot yet, but this little assistant that's following Lando around, his name is Lobot. If my friend Corey was still on like he was earlier, he could tell you more about Lobot because he's a huge fan. I want to say he doesn't speak. I don't remember the deal with Lobot a whole lot except for he looks fun. Poor Lando, stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm going to grab another pillow, y'all. Sorry, cat. My cat was like, no, you don't need another pillow. Like, yes, I do. Chewie's so well-intentioned, but sometimes he misses more obvious things, like putting the head of 3PO back on the right way. Come on. Come on, Mr. Baca. I like that he kind of chuckles a little bit here, though, and then just decides to switch him off. Okay, so notice the Stormtrooper's helmet when Han falls off. The helmet almost comes with it. The guy who leaves first, the helmet's like all the way up this half of his head. Poor Han. I'm pretty sure this set here is reused a lot. Like, I think this is actually the same set where Han got tortured, and they just turned down the lights and, well, they relit it. Here's another awesome moment where she's kind of let her guard down and basically admitted to him that she loves him back. So they just build this romance so nicely, so when the moment does come, when she confesses her love, it's really cathartic. Look at Harrison's hair, though. Even when I'm feeling terrible, I look good. Oh, big punch to the face. I got my own problems. Yeah, you're a real hero. Good stuff. And here is the carbon freezing chamber. Another really cool design set. Those stairs, I always loved the light that was on, the light that comes from behind those stairs. If anybody wants to know the time here, we're at 1:34:23. 1:34, 1 hour 34. So Luke is flying to Cloud City, even though he was told not to. And we all know what's happening now. I assume you all have seen this movie before, of course. So the actor in the Boba Fett costume is a guy by the name of Jeremy Bulloch. He actually will be seen soon out of costume playing a different character. He plays some Imperial officer guy. And I'll point him out to you when that shows up. And of course his dialogue there has been changed. Well, the dialogue is the same, but the voice actor who is saying it has changed. Because now that we have an actor cast for the clones, for those of you who are familiar with Attack of the Clones, Episode 2, Boba Fett is in fact technically a clone. So they wanted to make his voice match the actor who was the original template for the clone. Chewie. The lighting in this is kind of funny, the way that it comes up from above. Here we go. I love you. I know. So, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but that was not the original dialogue. Han was supposed to say, I love you too. And Harrison was not a fan of that line. And the director, Irvin Kershner, was like, yeah, it doesn't seem quite right. Let's try something else. So Kersh kept giving him ideas, stuff to say, throwing out stuff. Nothing was working. They're doing like a lot of takes. And then Kershner is finally like, okay, Harrison, just we're going to roll camera and say whatever comes into your mind first thing. So they roll. Carrie feeds in the line, I love you. And out comes, I know. And the rest is history. It was perfect. Perfect! Lo and behold, the actor actually kind of knows something about his character. I think that's a little bit of a problem with the sequel trilogy and with what Rian Johnson did with Luke Skywalker's character. Because Mark Hamill kept on saying, dude, I don't really know if this is the direction you should take for Luke Skywalker. And Rian Ryan didn't really listen to him a whole lot. The improvised line. The man. This is one thing I don't know much about. This is like the prop for the Carbonite. If anybody has any tidbits about that, I would love to see them, because I assume that I just want to know how they made this thing. It looks really heavy, right? But maybe not. I don't know what it's actually made of. Yeah, all that lighting from below is really creates some awkward shadows on Carrie's face, and I mean, it doesn't really matter when it comes to Darth Vader and people with helmets, but Vader, you're such a jerk. Lando puts his hand to his neck. Ay, I don't want to get choked. And then he has this look with Lobot. Luke has found his way. It's interesting that R2 is with him. Especially when you think about how sidelined R2-D2 gets in the new trilogy. But he's here, and he sticks around for a while. They eventually get separated, but it creates for a nice moment for R2 to get reunited with 3PO down the road. Okay, so Jeremy Bulloch, the guy I was telling you about who plays Boba Fett, coming up soon. He's actually not in the Boba Fett costume at this point, because he is playing this blonde-haired officer who pulls Leia back when she starts yelling to Luke, and she's like, "No, Luke, it's a trap, it's a trap." So what happened, they had to find another actor to temporarily play Boba Fett for this scene, right? So there's Jeremy. Yep, that is the guy who plays Boba Fett for most of the film. He's dragging Leia away. Yeah, you can see him pretty good from time to time. So they had to find somebody else to play Boba Fett for the scene, right? So they found the guy who plays Dak at the beginning of the movie, who's in Luke's snowspeeder with him. Luke's in the front and Dak is in the back, and Dak gets shot. Well, apparently this actor who played Dak is the same size as Jeremy Bulloch. So they were like, okay, let's just put this guy in the Boba Fett costume. He can be Boba Fett, and Jeremy can be the officer. Now, why did they just put that guy in the officer role? I don't know. Seems like that would have been a better fix, a more efficient fix. But what do I know? Oh boy, the lights come on just for your fight, guys. There's some really good footage of Mark Hamill rehearsing this fight choreography. And he's in jeans and like a belt. Like, it's just super different than what you might see today. Like when I got certified for stage combat, we were all in like athletic wear, shorts, like tank tops, and here Mark Hamill was back in '79 in his denim jeans. See Vader right there, one-handed grip on the lightsaber. In my previous commentary, I was talking a lot about lightsabers and how they were supposed to be held, because George originally wanted to be like a broadsword, and that two hands would be on the hilt at all times. Well, already that's evolved, and you see Vader with one hand, like this whole sequence here. At one point, there was a scene that got cut of Lobot getting kidnapped by the Imperials. And then there was a Lobot romance scene. There was a Lobot, saves the day. I'm just kidding. Billy D does a great job here because it's pretty clear that Chewie's not actually choking him. I mean, having all that yak fur on the Chewbacca costume certainly helps. He's only a Wookiee. This might be the last shot of Boba Fett that we see as he enters his ship, the Slave One, with his cape in the wind. A lot of this was touched up for the special edition too. Like that didn't used to be the cityscape in the background. It used to just be a wall. So they opened up a lot of the Cloud City stuff has been opened up. Yes, Joy, I will gladly show you or tell you where I'm at. If anybody else, like anytime you guys join in, you want to know where we're at time-wise, it's at 1:43, an hour and 43 minutes and 30-something seconds. Boba Fett's ship just flew off. Leia's looking at it, and here come the stormtroopers. Luckily, they're a terrible shot, and they never seem to hit our heroes. Meanwhile, the lightsaber duel has intensified. See, Luke tries the one-handed thing there, and of course he loses his saber and falls down the stairs. How you gonna get your saber back, bro? Don't step back. So coming up is the first appearance of the Force jump in any Star Wars movie, because Luke jumps up real good and real high. And Vader thinks he's got him. There you go, Luke. Joy, if you're still struggling to find us, we're at 1:44 now. An hour 44 and 52 seconds. Release your anger. I just love all this steam. Vader gets pushed down, probably on a big mattress down there somewhere. I love that this door opens and Luke's just like, well, I guess I'll walk through here. Now, coming up in this hallway, for those of you who are fans of the sequel trilogy, and you might remember in The Force Awakens, Rey has that vision when she picks up Luke's lightsaber for the first time in the castle, in that chest. The very first thing that she sees is this hallway that Luke is standing in, and that corridor. And it looks pretty spot on in Force Awakens. And from what I understand, they originally shot some stuff for Force Awakens that had Luke and Vader fighting in the distance. Like I don't know how it all worked, but they actually cast a couple people to recreate some of this fight scene and perhaps incorporate it in that vision. Not fair, Vader. You can't use the Force to just throw stuff at him. Yay, glad you're here. That transition's a little odd, because when you see Luke fly out, it makes it look like he's falling really far, but then the next time you see him, he's just dangling from that ledge. So it was always kind of lost on me, like, how did he get from point A to point B? Okay, so here's a fun thing that's coming up. Lando makes this announcement to the city, right? He says, we're evacuating, the Empire's here, grab your stuff and run. There's a character that runs by the camera with an ice cream. Look at that smart vest that chick's wearing. he has an ice cream machine in his hand, and it's a prop, obviously, but in reality, it is an ice cream machine. Now, they used that machine as a prop in The Mandalorian. So if you've watched The Mandalorian, hold on, here he comes up. He's an African American guy. Right there, big white ice cream maker in his hand. I love catching stuff like that. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, in The Mandalorian, in the first couple episodes, when they pay Mando for retrieving the Baby Yoda character, they bring out, they have a name for it. I used to know what it's called, but I don't remember now. But they bring out the ice cream maker, and it's a safe, basically. And the Beskar plates that they're paying Mando with are in that safe. So that's one thing I do like about Mandalorian. I personally think Mandalorian's kind of overhyped. Don't kill me for you big Mando fans. But some things that I do like are things like that, where they have this connective tissue from all the previous Star Wars movies and they incorporate it into it. It's just really rewarding for like big nerd fans like us who are like, oh, and it also makes the universe feel more lived in, right? More comedic moments with 3PO and Chewie. Leia with the blaster. Love it. Oh, my back. And then 3PO getting dragged on the ground. Of course I've looked better. See, they're so good together, 3PO and R2. There's just something about that dynamic that works so well. And again, something that could have been used more in future movies. All right, we're approaching the big reveal, everyone. And there's a lot for me to say about this big reveal. But I'll wait just a second and enjoy some of this choreography here. Vader ain't holding back, though. You'd think he'd kind of be like, well, this is my kid. Maybe I should take it a little easy. Nope. Okay, but here's the thing. The guy, David Prowse, who is playing Darth Vader on set, he didn't know what the line was going to be. The only person who knew, of course, was the director. And then Mark didn't know until the day of what the actual line was going to be. So in the script, it says, no, Obi-Wan killed your father. And that's what the actor said on set. The actor playing Darth Vader said, no, Obi-Wan killed your father. I'm going to shut up now because it's coming up right now. There it is. And everybody at the time was like, what? Nah, he's lying. But yeah, they didn't want this news to get out, obviously. So nobody on set knew. Mark didn't know until right before, so he could give the proper response. I just want to know what David Prowse was thinking when like Mark Hamill decided to carry on and on about it. Be like, whoa, this guy's really overacting. I don't know. But there's a funny story about how like Harrison turns to Mark Hamill when they're sitting and watching the first screening on Hollywood or in Hollywood. Harrison hears the line and was like, "Kid, you didn't tell me that." And somehow Luke falls into one of those little itty bitty bitty holes, and down the shaft he goes. Pretty iconic. That's also one of the most misquoted lines in all of cinema. Everybody thinks that it's Luke, I am your father. But it's not. It's no, I am your father. Because Luke says, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. Vader says, no, I am your father. Cody, would you say technically Obi-Wan did kill his father? I mean, kind of. Kind of. I have the high ground. Poor Ewan McGregor. He tries his best. Speaking of, boy, I'm really curious to see how the Kenobi series ends up. Seems to be a little bit of a rocky start, but hopefully it's being postponed for good reasons, and not bad ones. Of course, it might be postponed now because of the crazy times we live in. Alright, so here Luke is calling out for help from his Jedi Masters, and they clearly told him that that was not part of the deal. So he's reaching out to Leia, who he doesn't know is his sister at the time. But he figures it's worth a shot. Lando's like, I don't even know who Luke is. Can we just go, please? They added a lot of this stuff with Vader's shuttle at the end, too. I guess they just wanted to clarify that Vader was no longer on Cloud City. But yeah, a lot of that stuff was special edition changes. Some of his changes make some sense, others do not. I like this shot of Lando kind of being brought up through these openings. There's a lot of hatch doors he's got to get through to get to the top of the Falcon. And then Luke just drops. Of course, as a kid, as I'm watching this, all I could think about is Han Solo is frozen, Han Solo is frozen, what are we going to do? Han Solo is frozen. Hi, Leia. I lost my hand. Yeah, didn't go well. Thanks for the like, Jeff. Here's more Darth Vader shuttle stuff. I think this was actually stuff that was shot for the first movie that they just put in this one. Again, I guess to just clarify that Vader is back home on the Star Destroyer. Because that is totally Return of the Jedi footage, actually. Wow, I never noticed that. Okay, this scene here where Leia kisses Luke again. What's one more kiss for your brother? That used to be a longer scene too. Basically, with Leia just kind of explaining, "Hey, Luke is frozen. Boba Fett has him." And then Luke's like, "Who's Boba Fett?" And Leia's like, "Oh, he's a bounty hunter." She basically just catches him up on the plot. So I think that's why they cut that scene down, because obviously we already know that information. You can just assume that stuff has been shared. And of course, the hyperspace still is not fixed, because the Empire made sure that it didn't. But you know what's changed? R2 is on board now, y'all. See, I'm telling you, R2D2 is like the criminal mastermind, like in a good way, of this entire series. He knows everything. He knows how to fix 3PO. He knows who Yoda is. He knows who Vader is. And he knows how to fix the hyperdrive. That's just my own personal headcanon. One of the very first expanded universe novels, I don't know if it's one of the first, but it was one of the most influential. It's called Shadows of the Empire. And it's the story between this movie and the next. And it's so good. Highly recommend, if you're going to read any Star Wars expanded universe novels, that you read Shadows of the Empire. Has anybody read that? Caleb, if you're still on here, have you read that book? Because it really like feels like it seamlessly transitions from one movie to the next. And R2 just goes over and simply turns on the switchy switch. You know, why didn't you guys figure this out earlier? It's so easy. And then this next part I love, because Vader watches the Falcon escape. Admiral Piet is scared for his life because he's like, oh no, I've been seeing everybody get strangled throughout this whole movie. I'm going to be next to go. And you can kind of see Anakin think about stuff. But I think that's really revealing for Vader's character in that moment, because I don't think he wanted to shoot his son down, because obviously there's still good in him. So, all right, final push, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm loving this whole thing, and I hope you guys are too. And I'm gonna do all 9 of them, plus the standalone films, just because I'm ridiculous like that. Somehow Lando stole Han's costume, his outfit. There's the 2-1B droid again with the little microphone mouthpiece. There he is. I really like the costumes that Luke and Leia wear in this final scene, because it reminds me of what he wears in A New Hope, basically. And if you've seen the poster for the original Star Wars, where Luke has the lightsaber and the open chest thing, and Leia has like her leg out or whatever, it looks a lot like that. Very classic space opera sort of aesthetic. The tunic, the white. And as far as this ending goes, I was furious as a child. I was just like, wait a second, they forgot about Han Solo. Which, of course, the big reason why they left Han frozen in carbonite was because they didn't know if Harrison Ford was coming back. Because these two signed a 3-picture deal, and Harrison didn't. I think he just did one at a time, but I'm not entirely sure. Final shot, pulling away from the Rebel fleet as the music swells. God bless John Williams, though. And until next time, what are we going to do? No, I'm not leaving you yet. I got a couple more thoughts to throw at you before I let you all go. But yeah, at the end of this movie, I was just like, this is the worst cliffhanger ever. What am I supposed to do for the next? Luckily, when I saw these, it was in 1997. Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. I just bursted the audio there. So I saw the very first Star Wars movie in like '95, and then I saw the next two when they released the special editions to movie theaters in 1997. So luckily, I was able to see Empire Strikes Back in theaters and then go see Return of the Jedi pretty quickly after. So I didn't have to wait that long. Now, if I was a kid in 1980 and I saw the end of this and I was like, "You're telling me I'm not going to see the conclusion of the story till '83? I'm going to lose it." So, yeah, it's a great cliffhanger. The movie does what it set out to do. When you read a lot about Irvin Kershner, who's the director of this film, and what he was hoping for was rich character relationships, I think he totally got that out of our finished product here. I mean, I gabbed a lot about Han and Leia and how much I love them, but I also really enjoy a lot of the Luke Yoda stuff. I said the other night, I think Mark Hamill doesn't get enough credit for his acting skills and the way that his character really changes over the course of the trilogy. She said it made her so angry at I believe it. I'd love to get more feedback about people who were watching these movies as they were actually coming out in the 70s and 80s. Angry yet anxious for sure. But yeah, Mark Hamill does great. I think kind of like what I said earlier in this commentary, good writing a lot of times is when you put your characters in a tree and you light the tree on fire. And that's exactly what we get to see here. We get to see them being pursued by the Empire. The stakes are so high, and during that, they're growing closer together. You see Han and Leia's relationship, their love really blossom. Again, I'm a sucker for the romance, so that really sticks out to me. But even the companionship between Chewie and Han, between 3PO and R2, as ridiculous as that sounds, because 3PO is just kind of obnoxious, but everybody, really cares for one another. And to me, that's what Star Wars has always been about and should always be about. It's about the relationships. It's about these, well, really the three best friends and then kind of the supplemental characters around them. Kind of being destined to be soulmates in a weird way. I don't love that word, but that's the only one that comes to mind to really kind of describe what I'm trying to capture here. So I think the sequel trilogy should have made a bigger attempt at that, and I think JJ realized it, again, a little bit too late, and he did his best. I think there's a lot of good stuff in Rise of Skywalker, and I look forward to continuing to talk about that, and I promise I will get there. Probably going to watch Return of the Jedi in another 2 or 3 days. I'd be interested to hear from you guys if you think that's too soon or too late. But I will go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining in, for commenting. Love it. I'm having so much fun. Love you guys. Stay safe out there.